Vítejte na konferenci o participativní demokracii, kterou organizuje Masarykova demokratická akademie společně se světovým hnutím o přímé demokracii v rámci Pražské školy Alternativ. Já jsem velmi rád, že jsme mohli spolupracovat s panem doktorem Polákem ze Švédska a spoluorganizovat tuto konferenci. Jsou tady zahraniční hosté, další ještě přijedou v průběhu tohoto víkendu, čeští hosté a kvůli tomu také jednotlivé sekce budou v češtině nebo v angličtině, takže budou moci participovat všichni. Naplníme motto participativní demokracie a vzájemně potom různé diskuze mohou být ještě překládány a další příspěvky také, abychom si vzájemně rozuměli i ti, kteří nerozumějí oba tyto jazyky. Hello, good morning. I would like to welcome you here in the conference on participatory democracy, which is organized by Masaryk Democratic Academy and Board Direct Democratic Movement within the framework of Prague School of Alternatives. We will speak in Czech and English. Some sessions will be in Czech, some in English, according to the participants, in order to give an opportunity to all the people to participate democratically. Not just to talk about participatory democracy, but to see it in practice. And I would like to thank Dr. Polák for cooperation, and I'm really grateful to him that he addressed me and we organized this conference together. And of course, I'm happy that participants from various countries came, from Europe, from the USA. I'm very grateful that Senator is here, and other people from Africa and other regions of the world will come as well. So that's all. Welcome.
I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Global European and Czech Movement for Direct Democracy. Thank you for coming. This is not the first conference of this type. The first one was held in Příbram, Czech Republic in 1998. But this conference is the first one which is held by a officially recognized and respected institution, namely the Masaryk Democratic Academy. And for that, I would like to thank especially Dr. Hrubec for giving us this opportunity, and for his collaborator, Dr. Brabec, who is in charge of the Prague Center. And I would also like to thank Mr. Lukáš Kantor. I don't see him here, but it was he who put me in charge. He is there. He put me in charge, in contact with Dr. Hrubec. So it's thanks to him in the first place that this conference can take place. So I will not speak any longer. It's better that Senator Gravel holds the main speech this morning. It's a very rare opportunity to have an American senator in under such circumstances. So I thank Senator Gravel for coming, and please, Mike, you have the floor.
Good. First off, let me apologize that I don't speak your language. I can only speak in English. I speak some French, but I apologize. We have this barrier of communication, which dates back to the Tower of Babel. I wanted to, and just briefly, I learned about what, well, first off, let me ask, how many of you understand English? Raise your hands. Okay, good. It's just that the generation that's my age doesn't seem to. But I'm sure with the documents that we prepared that we'll share that. Just by way of introduction, I am a former U.S. Senator. I left office, I served 12 years in the Senate, and I left office in 1980. So that'll give you an idea. I got elected when I was 38, and I left when I was 50, and I'm 81 now. So I've been out of office for some time. But I ran for president in 2008 cycle, and debated Hillary Clinton and debated Obama, and was pushed out of the presidential campaign by the leadership of the Democratic Party and General Electric because of my views on nuclear matters that they found very distressing and opposed to their economic interest. That's just by way. I've been a very controversial person in the United States, and you'll see why by some of the comments I'll make. I don't want to monopolize all the time because I'd like the other participants, and so we're going to be holding forth here until noon. But I understand that there'll be 2 other participants besides myself, 3, that need time to address.
Unfortunately, Samuel from Africa didn't count, so it's far away, and hopefully he will come later.
Okay, good. But when you mention Africa, unfortunately, the United States right now is expanding its imperial power by sending 150 troops to Africa, and this is the first time that the United States is doing this. So you clearly understand the direction I come from, is that I oppose the imperialistic powers of the United States and speak about them extensively. It's a tragedy because the United States has been a great country. It was great during the Second World War. It was great after the Second World War when it went into the Marshall Plan and had the moral motivation to rebuild Europe. But it has not been great for the last 2-3 decades. And of course, people have much hope about Barack Obama. Well, I know him quite well, and I want to tell you that he is essentially no different than George Bush. And George Bush was horrible, probably one of the worst presidents in American history. And but the difference between Bush and Obama is Obama is very intelligent and is a very gifted speaker. And so he tells you what you want to hear, not what he's actually doing. And of course, that's part of politics. A politician gets elected by telling you what you want to hear, and then he does, or she does, whatever is in their personal interest. And that is generally responding to special interest. I feel very deeply in my experience in public office, and I've been in politics since I was 15 years old. I was the leader in Alaska. I was chairman. I was the speaker of the House of Representatives. I was essentially involved in all the controversial issues against secrecy, against nuclear development, with respect to energy in Alaska, which is a very important aspect of that. But what I'm doing today is considerably more important than anything that I ever did as an elected official. And my colleague here was pointing out to me personally that he got into a very influential position in government and was disillusioned by what actually happens within the government. Well, I want to tell you that is accurate. That is accurate. Representative government, and here I would dispute the use of the word participatory. What participatory means in terms of government is that the people will participate. But it presupposes that you haven't changed the structure of representative government. All you've done is let the people come in and give them some voice. But all it is a voice of opinion. No power. No power. Cicero, more than 2,000 years ago, Marcus Cicero, Roman senator, said that freedom is participation in power. Now, what is the power of government? It's not the Prime Minister, not the President, it's not the judiciary. The central power of government is lawmaking. You make laws. And that's the great contribution of Solon in 592 BC, where he developed the concept that if we're going to govern ourselves, let us make laws or rules out here, and we live by those rules, and not by the whim of individuals who happen to have power at a specific period of time. And so unfortunately, you don't have this central power of government, which is the ability to make laws. And so until you have that ability, according to Cicero, and I totally agree, until you have that ability to become a lawmaker, independent of representative government, you will never have real freedom, and you will never, as a society, be able to have self-governance that will address the public interest. Now, there's the two issues that I'm involved with right now. One is, you've heard, up until this summer, I met Dr. Pollack 13 years ago, and during all that time, I would attend conferences in Europe, in the United States, and would advocate to very well-meaning people who have a concept of participation, and I would advocate that they not trust the government or be involved at all with the government. Because whenever the government is involved, they are the superior power, and they will co-opt and they will appropriate your thoughts sufficiently to then manipulate you into going along with what they believe in. And what do they believe in? They believe in corporate domination at the nation-state level and at the global level. There's a recent author writing about global economics, and that was that globalization, like corporations, they've globalized everything in the world, except our consent. And corporations are designed to satisfy the economic interest of those who rule in the corporations and rule our society as a result of it. Keep in mind that a recent study out of Zurich by a foundation there has pointed out that 1,350 corporations control 60% of the world's wealth. Now, in the United States, 1% of the people, and this was not what it used to be, 1% of the people receive more than 25%, almost a third, of all the income in the United States. 1%. And that 1% has 40% of all the wealth in the United States. The disparity in the United States is growing and growing. We're falling behind. You judge a civilization by how it treats its elderly and how it treats its young. In the United States, we do a terrible job in both instances. And why is that? Because it's ruled by Wall Street, and it's ruled by the military-industrial complex. And the reason why we have a global war on terror, because terror is not a war, terror is a tactic of extremism. But when you call it a war, you now can appropriate unbelievable sums of money to undergird the economic interest, the corporate interest that are involved. A shocking statement. The United States is bankrupt today. We are more bankrupt than Greece. And if we applied what we're doing to the poor Greeks, if we applied that to the United States would just disappear as a global power. But no, we can apply it to small countries. It's easy to use our might, force, not logic, force, to make them comply to our standards, and we do it through the World Bank, and we do it to the IMF. And these are tools These are tools of corporate society, make no mistake about it. What is the answer? I can paint you a terrible picture and we'd all be very gloomy, but I would be. I believe that we as human beings can do a better job than what we're doing in terms of governance. And what I have come to the conclusion of, that there's only two venues where you can bring about change, fundamental change. One is the government, and that's where the problem is. The government, that's where the problem is. And so when you go to the government, they co-opt you so that they can continue what they're doing. And that's the mistake we all make as progressives and liberals and even conservatives. We look to the government for a solution. Well, there's not a government in the world, and I even include Switzerland, that really puts the public interest first from the perspective of representative government. Now, what's the other venue for change? The other venue is the people. Now, the problem, to go to the people, they want to do, and they know what's going on. Whenever I hear academics tell me, oh, we got to educate the people. Educate the people is not necessary. The people intuitively know they are getting screwed. Now, I don't know what the translation for that is in Czech, but they know that they are not being treated as well as the elites that control our society. They know this. So we don't have to educate the people. They will educate themselves. What we have to do is to put the power in their hands so they can act upon the knowledge that they can correct. Only the people will do that. Representative government will not. Representative government is designed to maintain us in civic adolescence. What is civic adolescence? Oh, I want this, but I don't want to pay any taxes. Oh, I want that, but I don't want to pay any taxes. What is that? That's adolescent behavior. You see it in your children. Now, how do we take us, and this is the world, I'm talking worldwide right now, how do we take the society, the individuals, from civic adolescence to civic adulthood? There's only one way you do it. You do it the way we raise our children. You give them more responsibility, and then all of a sudden they become adults and mature. But we should do the same thing in our systems of government. Give the people the responsibility to make decisions, and they will suffer the consequences of bad decisions and enjoy the benefits of good decisions. And that's how the people will mature. And so in the world, we'll go from civic adolescence to adult behavior, and we're not there by a long shot. I wrote legislation. It took me 7 years, and that's after 16 years as a legislator. It took me 7 years to write legislation through trial and error, basically. And this legislation is called the National Initiative for Democracy. You can go on the website, ni4d.us, and we'll be circulating some papers that I've written, that the website is on there. And so, up until now, I've been very pessimistic, and I apologize for the cold that I have. I've been very pessimistic that I might live to see the national initiative become the law of the United States or any other country. Because 3 years ago, I spent 3 months in South Korea, because their constitution is better than the American Constitution. And so we were able to develop an organization there. But unfortunately, their president, Myung Bak, is a replica of George Bush. So you don't get much progressive activity taking place. And now he's very locked in, very close with Obama. So that'll give you an idea where Obama is on this kind of stuff. So I came back to the United States and very discouraged, and started to work with what we call in the United States and worldwide is 9/11 truthers. 9/11 was, of course, what happened in New York and Pentagon. And the government did a very minor, superficial investigation. It wasn't even an investigation. And they put out the story about what happened on 9/11. Well, I'm proud to tell you, as Europeans, most Europeans, much more percentage-wise, than Americans do not believe what happened on 9/11, that the American government is telling me what happened. And I don't believe it. It was a false flag operation. And for those of you from the Czech Republic know that it was a false flag operation by Hitler in Poland that brought about the beginning of the Second World War. And so you are very sensitive to this concept of a false flag. We are receiving donations, more donations from Europe and primarily Germany than we are for our cause for in the United States. And so the concept that I brought forward, and Jerry will appreciate this, I was not part of the movement, but I was on a panel, and it was interesting. I was on the panel in New York, and I want to introduce the lady who's taking me around on this tour of Europe, which goes to Paris, to Zurich, to Rome, and Amsterdam, and Bonn, and Berlin. And that's Annie Michon, the young lady sitting over there, who's raise your hand, Annie, please. Annie is a former MI5 British analyst who was a whistleblower and told the truth about what the British government was doing. And of course, she's no longer a member of MI5. That's a pattern of what happens with whistleblowers. But she's an activist who works on 9/11, works on peace, who works in speaking and is involved in journalism. And so she's the one that's organized my tour of Europe, and I'll be coming back and making another tour in the spring. And because I made a contribution that what we could do with respect to the 9/11 truth movement, to find out what really happened for the benefit of the United States citizens and for the benefit of the world. Because the way we've conducted ourselves since 9/11 has been horrific. We're a warmongering nation at this point in time, whether it's in Iraq. And I say this as a person who loves my country, but I love the world more. I'm a globalist, first and foremost. I think that your human rights as Czechs or as Europeans are every bit as important as the human rights of Americans. And I would fight with every ounce of breath I have to defend your civil rights as much as I want my civil rights as an American to be honored. So I made the contribution that what we need is direct democracy to expose what happened on 9/11 by having a new investigation. Now the government won't do it. Mainstream media in the United States won't even talk about it. In fact, they ridicule you if you question what the government has said in the United States. You're ridiculed. And we call it marginalization. And that's what's going on. And so what I was able to do, since I was not involved with the truth movement, I have my own credentials in working for peace, anti-war, against secrecy. And so when I came in, I was greeted with open arms, and then I had the suggestion, well, let's go to the various states in the United States and pass a law by the people, initiative, that will establish a new investigation of 9/11, and it will have nothing to do with the federal government. Now let me emphasize, and I just want to give you this advice as a person who's lived through this period. I have no faith in representative government attending to the public interest. None at all. And that comes from very hard experience. Now I think it's important to elect good people to public office. Very good. But I see good people get elected to public office and they can't do anything. And they become disillusioned once they are there trying to exercise the issues of power. The things that I did as a senator, most of my major accomplishments, and many were major, took place in the first 4 years. After they found out what I was, they spent the next 6 years, 8 years, marginalizing me in the Senate. Fortunately, the Senate has a filibuster, and so I would filibuster. I would threaten these other areas, and so I was feared as a person, but the sooner they could get me out of office, and they did. So now, My major contribution is the paper that's being presented to you now. We started, as I said, I've been working a year now trying to get the investigation going through laws at the state level of the United States. But while we were scratching away at this, an unbelievable phenomenon took place worldwide. And that is that a young group of scruffy-looking young people decided to occupy Wall Street. And for the first 3 or 4 days, it was a blackout. You did not hear any press about these young people, and not so young, older people that were there too, that were physically occupying a park right there next to Wall Street. And it eventually caught on. They persisted. And the media was forced to pay attention. A little bit, and before you know it, now it's big news. It's big news worldwide, and where do you have the Occupy Wall Street? You have it in all the major centers of the world today. It's a phenomenon that comes from the people. And what the political parties are scrambling around to try and get involved with them. Because what does a politician do? He finds out where the people are going, and then he runs to the head of the column and follows the people, but by leading it and manipulating it. That's political leadership. There's no courage, there's no vision that you see, because when you exercise courage and vision, you're snuffed out by the corporate interests that control our governing, the governments and the tools of our culture. So now what I've done is I've written this document, which is being circulated throughout the protest movement in the various cities in the United States and hopefully now in Europe. This document is a very succinct recommendation as to what the protest movement needs to do. If they do not move to an actionable item, define actionable in a moment, they will fail. It will be like all protest movements, it will die out. Or they'll be co-opted by the powers that control our society. That's what will happen. However, if they recognize that they need an actionable item, and what is it that they could do that has action? They're not elected. They have an agenda. What they need to do is to empower themselves to make laws. And as lawmakers, working independent of representative government, I do not advocate doing away with representative government. I advocate bringing the people into the operation of government independent of representative government, where the people can make laws, representative government can make laws, but the phenomenon that occurs the minute you bring the people into the operation of government, they become the senior partners. And therefore, they have the majority of the power for the first time in world history over representative government. Representative government came out of the Age of Enlightenment, and it was waylaid to permit elites to continue to control society. And so now we have a pyramid, and we're controlled by 1% of the people, and the rest are at the bottom, and they suffer the consequences of being at the bottom. So the jury is out. If we're successful in proselytizing, and I don't want to be the leader of the Wall Street, I'm too old to be the leader of anything at this point. All I can do is write and speak. But if they adopt a plan, and the plan is on the shelf, and I might say, this same plan, I could write a law for the Czech Republic, for France, for Britain, and I'll tell you why it's so easy. And I'll end on this note. You have to understand who you are. You are sovereigns. You own your body. And that's what we learned from the Age of Enlightenment. That as a human being, it's not a piece of paper, whether a constitution or a law, that makes you sovereign. Not at all. You are sovereign. You are the king. You are the queens of your body by the very fact that you're alive. You're a human being. That's what makes you sovereign. Now, when we come together in society, or what you call the polity, which is the part of society which is the governing part, when we come together as sovereigns, we then transfer our sovereignty to our group, and we make decisions on a majoritarian basis. Because if you don't make it on a majoritarian basis, then it's made on a minority basis. And that's what we have today in the world, that public policy is made by a minority, in such a small minority, I would say 1–2%, makes the decisions that affect all our lives. And so you have to understand, you're the sovereign. When we come together, we are collectively the sovereign, and we're the sovereign of government. And the law that I've written, which took 7 years to write, is on the shelf. All people have to do is reach for this law and implement it. And it's a constitutional amendment, and it's a legislative procedures, so that you can be lawmakers. Making laws is very important, so you need procedures to do it. And I have to find detailed procedures that are operable in every government jurisdiction of the country, at the city council level to the federal level. And I hope we'll set the precedent to have it operated at the global level, so we will eventually come to what will be the ultimate of democracy, is human beings governing themselves, and governing themselves not only within the nation state, but governing themselves at the global level. Because until we have a global federation, we human beings will never have benefits of world peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and now we would like to ask. It's up to maybe there.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I will read my speech, and I beg your pardon for my bad English. Recently, in our country, were in discussion rejected the phenomena named privatization of the political parties, meaning their domination not by professional politicians who live very well on them, but by their competitors among good fathers, rich entrepreneurs, speculators and mafiosos who do business in politics to make profit. Per internet, I put forward my view that in the system of parliamentary democracy, political parties have been private enterprises at all times. That is fact should be openly admitted, including all ensuing consequences. To avoid invectives which might be raised against my person, let me bring a quotation from the book written by the father of modern liberalism, Ludwig Mises. Liberalism, published in 1924. In chapter 4, Liberalism and Political Parties, he says, we speak about the crisis of modern state and the crisis of parliamentarism. In fact, it is the crisis of party ideologies embraced by modern vested interest parties, in German, die Interessenparteien. This means parties who have created interest groups in order to promote their group's interests to the detriment of other groups. Mises goes on saying that her purpose is to gain maximum advantages and extraordinary rights for groups they represent to the detriment of the majority. Modern Western interest parties are destroying not only the parliamentarism but social life in general. In this perspective, not only in Czech Republic, political parties are private enterprises from the beginning. The legal form are different in different contexts, depending on the degree of achieved cultural development, historical, political, and economical conditions. In Asia and Africa, it's often are private enterprises of families, like the Kims and Turkmenbashis, the Assads, Mubaraks, and Gaddafis, where the parties are ruled directly by their owners. These are overt dictatorship. In some places, the proprietors of parties chose the form of so-called steered democracy, where the family enterprise is ruled directly, is not ruled directly by the owner, but by hired managers, professional politicians. Existed also registered corporations belonging to juntas or mafia. In our developing Western countries, the parties often assume the form of enterprises type LTD with fully limited liability. Besides, in our small Czech Republic, the parties have also small membership bases. Furthermore, their base is divided into a close elite of functionaries who permanently distribute among themselves lucrative posts in established institutions and in the administration, receiving high fees and into the party plebs needed only during elections. Contrary to the legislation of the European Union, these private entrepreneurial subjects, a very petty fraction of the electorate, are subsidized by the state budget. Therefore, the slogan, "Prevent privatization of political parties," is absurd. Its purpose is to conceal the real nature of the parliamentary democracy, which is not democracy, but it is an oligarchy in the hands of the economic and political elite. At most, it reflects the power struggle among proprietors of parties who harvest billion profits and hired managers, professional politicians, who only get incomparably lower wages and bribes, and whom the proprietors can sack at any time. This crisis of parliamentary democracy can be resolved only by admitting the political parties private character, and B, separating them from the state. All the constitutions of contemporary so-called democratic states declare that it is free citizen who is their sovereign. However, and everywhere, the praxis of today's representative democracy has reduced the citizens' sovereignty to nothing more than occasional elections of representatives nominated by political parties without the possibility of selection. Without the possibility of selection. Therefore, disgusted citizens either abstain from participation in election or participate according to the criterion of the least evil. During the period between elections, the uncallable representatives promote the private interest of the party bosses and party godfather, regardless of its election promises. The only alternative to parliamentary democracy is direct democracy. However, owing to the fact that the concept of direct democracy threatens the current rule by interest parties, this concept is, in quotation marks, scientifically rejected as unrealizable, and the public is disinformed about it. A successive transition to direct or participatory or deliberative democracy should proceed by the following steps. First, draft on a new citizen constitution proposed on the basis of a broad expert and national-wide discussion and its adoption by a nationwide referendum. Second, separation of political parties from the state by placing them on the same level as other citizen associations, like in France, for example. Third, stopping their financing from the state budget and the adoption of a law stipulating that they may only be financed by their registered members, their publishing houses, or educational institutions, and that they have to be subject of current taxation. The parties must be fully fiscally accountable and subject of supervision of the fiscal administration. And fourth, the election law must be changed so as to stipulate the elections to all representative bodies are to be carried through on the basis of single mandate election districts. The candidates can be nominated by all registered citizens associations and parties, as well as by ad hoc petition associations fulfilling the requirement of an adequate quorum. The elected representatives must be subject to the possibility of recall even between the elections if the number of voters requiring that reaches the proscribed quorum. That is all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank you particularly. I had never thought of the concept that the parties were the tool for the privatization of government. And I will be using that henceforth in as I articulate my views. And so I am deeply in your debt. Now, we have it down on the program that I'm the chairman. Well, that's not a really fair position. That should be a position given to Dr. Úvod. And so I'll ask him, since he can both address you in English and in Czech, and I'll ask him if he would take over the chairmanship of it, and I would just be a normal panel member with Dr. Trinkwitz. And of course, we don't have the person from Africa here, but we do have a microphone there. If we have a question, people can raise it. And those of you that only speak Czech, please pose your question, and then we can translate it so I can understand it, or Dr. or Jerry can understand it. So let me turn it over to our host, who should be the chairman and not become a panel member.
Okay, so now we can open the discussion. Můžeme otevřít diskuzi v češtině i v angličtině, takže kdo má otázky, může se ptát. Professor
Czech English, which is very understandable for you and an American as well as for the Czechs. In my heart, I'm with you. In my head, I'm rather skeptical. As a sociologist, I should like to tell you why. You said that the only solution is to enable the minorities to decide. I feel deep in your soul there is Jefferson. Well, the American dream of a small community which is transparent, where the needs, the tensions are understandable, but we live in a completely different society. We live in societies where there are unbelievable number of minorities, of legitimate intentions of people who suffer from different changes which are brought by an unbelievable complex, a machine which somehow get out of our power. In this situation, I'm afraid that the only solution which would fit your ideas, and I said in my heart, I'm with you, would destroy completely the existing complex society machines. What you are asking for, you are asking for a very radical change. And you know, this country went through so many radical changes. We simply don't believe in revolutions, at least my generation. Maybe younger people think that this is a kind of solution. I think that people like Úvod and Martin know that this is risky. So in the given situation, with my heart with you, but with my, excuse me the term, knowledge of the situation, I would prefer a stepwise change, trying to find the possibilities, how to involve as much as possible people into the decision making. I know we are in the hands of powers. Power is extremely dangerous. But at the same time, without power, the whole structure would collapse in a way. Decision makers. Yeah. I'm sure that in some moments these people would tell you, I know that I am doing sometimes dangerous and horrible things. Can you tell me, what shall I do in such decisions like atomic power plants, like energy problems in general? What to do with environmental problems? Do you think that minorities are able, minorities in the best intentions, are at all able to help? Sorry to be so skeptical, and I repeat, in my heart, I'm with you, in my understanding, the contemporary structure of modern societies, Western. If you want to move back to simple, very simple type of organization, then all right. But then you have to say honestly, I'm asking for the destruction of the contemporary type of world, of our world. Maybe we are moving that direction, but I don't know if all minorities will agree with me. That's all.
Let me respond to that. And let me address your brain, not your heart. Okay? I'm after rational thought. You presuppose that I'm advocating a minority rule. You couldn't be more wrong. The pyramid, this is the top of the pyramid, is where the minority rules. But what I'm talking about is the bottom of the pyramid where all the people are. So I don't know how you could interpret that I want minority rule, and that by minority rule, let me finish. By minority rule, you assume, or rather, by majority rule, we've never had a majority rule in the world, in world government, never had it, okay? So you're making a leap, because what I'm advocating is the unknown. You've never heard of this proposal before, where the people can be given the structure of human governance, okay? So if you have a proper structure, you won't have, and I get this question all the time. In Boston, one of the call-ins was, oh, if you succeed, Senator, what's going to happen? The whole world's going to fall apart. The United States is going to fall apart. Not at all. Not at all. You know who rules the world today? It's the minority. So when you say that, I don't know how you could invert it and say that I'm recommending the minority already rules. Now, you conflate the problem of various cultures, various languages. There's nothing wrong with that. If we can demonstrate anything, is that human beings all have the same aspirations. Regardless if you're Russian, Czech, yes, they do have the same aspiration. You want happiness, you want economic security, and you want the best for your children and the best for yourself in old age. That's what you want. Well, you can say, oh, there's other things we want. They act irresponsibly in consumerism, what have you. But go back to the realization of where you're at today. We are ruled by corporations. A very small economic interest, and their reward goes to their shareholders first and foremost, not to the general public. And so I don't understand when you say, and I'll want to hear your response to my response, and that is that you say that I don't advocate minority rule. I advocate majority rule. Now, Lord Acton, more than 100 years ago, made the statement that you can't trust democracy because if you give the people the power, they will open the purse, shower themselves with money, and bankrupt democracy. And that's what you're saying will happen, that it will fail. Well, let me tell you, in the United States, we have 100 years of experience of passing laws at the state level for initiatives. Not one of those 1,500 legislation by the people did anything to ever bankrupt the United States. Who has bankrupted the United States? It's representative government. It's the politicians, whether at the federal level, in New York City, Orange County, Chicago, they have all bankrupted their governments. It's the politicians, this small minority that rule us, that are bankrupting our society. And all I can say is that I do call upon one thing, and that is unreserved faith in human beings. Well, if you don't have faith in human beings, then you defer your life to the control of small minorities. Whether it's a small minority in the banking interest of Germany or on Wall Street, they rule you right now. And if you're happy with what's going on, then I don't dispute that. I'm not happy with what's going on, and I want to see a change, and I'm not afraid of the people in making the change. The people will grow up faster than you realize. But you may want to respond to that I clearly, now I'm talking about majority rule, not minority rule. Now, and I know that you've got various factions and cultures and what have you. We see it in Switzerland. 4 languages, 4 cultures, 4 religions, and they've got together. The last time they had any violence was in 1848, when they brought the people into the operation of government as partners with elected officials. Now, and they've lived in peace ever since, and economically, they've made themselves some of the most successful people economically in the world, and they have no resources. I make that case.
Okay, so if you would like to...
I'm extremely sorry that, and I apologize, omlouvám se přítomným, že zabírám čas. I made a mistake. When I said minorities, what I had in mind, and I hinted to the problem by mentioning Jefferson. It seems to me it would be much better to think about not minorities but rather small communities or small units, social, economic, etc. Again I repeat, I'm with you in your intentions, but I'm only worried about the possibilities which you propose, you know, the way how you it's not clear for me how you would, in practical terms, do it. Simply,
let me share
the
that.
we are afraid of radical solutions here. You must understand.
It's not radical.
You are radical.
Well,
let me
point it out.
Radical, that means
First of all,
yes,
this
all
is
right,
a very
that's
important dialogue.
my apology
No,
of my
don't apologize.
explanation. You are talking about small societies.
No,
we
I'm
are
not.
totally
I'm talking-
in small
First off,
societies.
this is a very important dialogue. Please don't apologize for the points you're raising, because here, I've yet to hear new argumentation made on this subject. First off, when you talk about Jefferson, he writes a great article, but Thomas Jefferson is not one of my persons that I admire that much. He had slaves, and but moving away from Jefferson, what you're saying is that you don't understand how this will come about. Let me tell you how it'll come about. Just the way it'll come about in the United States. We have the technology in Czech Republic today, as citizens. These two gentlemen can take this law that I've written, turn it into Czech language, tweak it to meet your constitutions, and I mean tweak, not very much. And then, what do? They ask the Czech citizens, do you want to empower yourself to make laws just like your elected officials make laws in your parliament? That technology is on the internet. I mean, this is mundane. So now you ask the people, and if the people, now how do the people, we don't even go to the government. Let me tell you, people say, well, we got to pass this in Parliament. Hell no. The minute you go to Parliament, you're dead. You ask the people through the technology, do you want to be empowered to make laws? Now, they will vote, not an opinion, they will sign a ballot, and they will vote yes or no. And if you have the majority of the people signing a ballot voting yes, it is automatically the law of the land. You don't have to go to the parliament. Stop and think. I was telling you a moment ago, you are the sovereign of your body. Now, when you come into the society of the Czech government, you are collectively the sovereign. Now, if you have to depend upon a piece of paper to realize that you are the sovereign, then you're not the sovereign. You're the slave of the elites who control the government. They control what the paper says. And all I'm saying is if you read this law that I've written, it's 5,600 words. You can read it in a half hour. And there's not a word that got on that piece of paper by accident. I said that I have 16 years of legislative experience, and it took me 7 years to write this legislation. And I've been to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they wouldn't even hear it. What was the issue? The issues were simple. Who rules society? The people or government officialdom? They wouldn't even touch that subject. And that's what you have to... Now, I can understand fear. I can understand fear. When you're moving into the unknown, you've got only 3 things that can happen. It can stay the same, it can get better, or it can get worse. And so if you're well off in society, you don't want to move into the unknown and have change. But if you're at the bottom of the pyramid, you want change. And most of the people in society are at the bottom of the pyramid, and they intuitively know, and let me say it again, they intuitively know they are screwed by the minority, and therefore the only chance they have is to acquire the power, the central power of government lawmaking. So you can do this, and I will be sending these 2 gentlemen the text so that you can translate it into Czech, and I maintain this can be done in any country in the world. You just need a device to go to the people. And if you fear the people, well, there's nothing I can do about that. Okay. Thank you for the question. It was a very good question. I get this all the time.
Other questions or commentaries? Okay, please.
Senator, I'm happy to be here because in the past in this room some discussions were not my cup of tea. I'm very glad, by the way, what I hear from Mr. Professor Musil, because he also is changing in the right direction. Excuse me, sir. And therefore, my heart, yes, is on your side. But look, you mentioned just government, people. But what about media? In this, for example, in this country alone here, the decisive problem in the political parties sometimes, but media. Take matter in Great Britain. What was Tony Blair? Just a puppet in a certain way of big a big company, media company, etc. And the third, I think you don't speak, you just should mention the fact that I would mix Congress and government. Government, by government, by the way, I mean the bureaucracy, the whole apparatus. It is more or less permanent or changing, but it depends which country, of course. Therefore, there can be changes. And don't forget that in this country, just over a few days, the regime collapsed in 1989, and appeared situation that the power was in the street, and it depended who will take it, according to me. Therefore, you know, if you say wait for election day, next 2, 4, 6 years, it depends how you judge the economic financial crisis. According to me, and not only me, Stiglitz, by the way, I know him well from Columbia University, was here a few weeks ago. These people, Paul Krugman, they are afraid that it could be in depression. In that case, people will know wait next 6 years, as you mentioned here. And not necessarily it must be majority. You know, the key problem is to occupy the power in the capital. By the way, it happened in 1989, the same. Decisive was Prague. Later on came some other towns and cities, etc. Therefore, you know, it sounds to me a bit, excuse me, I would like to offend you, but a bit anarchistic.
A bit what?
It's anarchistic. That you just hope that broad masses will write and do this and that. No. There must be minority, even some intellectuals, maybe some are sitting here, and who can decide in a key moment. And as for the masses, you know, if you take what they read, I travel not by car for many years, by train, for example. I use bus, etc., discuss with people. You know, they are under influence of boulevard press. Therefore, their opinion are just, listen to our radio. I like our President Mr. Klaus because he's such a smart gentleman, you know. He looks like Masaryk. Nonsense. Dangerous neo-fascist. Not yet. Will be. By the way, the theologian just wrote in Respect article. The theologian is afraid that really this is the tendency which is developing here. Therefore, in this aspect must be taken into account. They must not get time to do what they intend to do. Therefore, thank you very much for this conference, for this. By the way, I have earlier what you wrote here. And the spirit of your presentation is excellent, but I think it deserves very deep discussions, and I think Mr. Musil started to put some questions. I agree with some, I don't agree with others, but it doesn't matter. And please, people who organize this conference, continue. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to ask if Engineer Plinkevich or Senator Arcrain would like to reply, to say something, to make a commentary or some answers.
Yeah, I would just add, isn't it interesting that it's my generation that I think I'm older than both of you.
No.
How old are you?
83.
I'm 81, okay, so you got me by 2 years.
You can bring me beer, you know.
True.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but we are the same generation. And our generation has suffered so much, particularly in this part of the world, much more than where I come from in the United States. And all I can say is that what you see now is all you know. That's all I know. what I'm talking about, you have never seen. You don't know how it will operate. And so you make a judgment that it will operate as bad as what you see now and experience. So the criticisms against direct democracy are all essentially the criticisms that you observe and the actions you observe in representative government. We don't have a democracy in the world. Abraham Lincoln in the United States used at the Gettysburg Address of, for, and by the people. Well, he was not telling the truth. He was like a good politician, a little bit of a lie, because we never had in the United States government by the people. You have never had it in the Czech Republic. You've never had it anywhere in the world. And the point that you were making about Madison, who was saying, oh, that democracy will only work in small little communities. Well, the technology makes that a lie. The technology can show us that we can all work globally. I mean, we could have global elections with the internet today. But the difference is that the technology is used and manipulated by the elites to do polling. You know, so we want to get your opinion. Well, first off, most people when they're polled, they don't know what the hell they're talking about because they don't pay attention. And so they just respond. But now, when people are about to make a decision that affects the law, well, they'll pay a little more attention as to how they will do it. And you assume that, and I can give you my experience in the United States, 95% of the members of the Congress of the United States have not read 95% of the laws they vote on. That's accurate. And I'm sure it's accurate for your own parliament.
Yeah.
Why? Very simple. Half the time you got to raise money to stay in office. And the other half the time you operate legislatively under a subcommittee system where one group, since life is so complex, one group studies the issue legislatively and passes it on to the larger body to vote. Well, you're at a disadvantage because you haven't read the law that I've written. And when you read the law, you'll see that I've set up a structure that's exactly the same way. People won't make laws by ridiculous opinions. They will have to have hearings, markups, advisory votes, communication processes. It's all there. And I've had the advantage that I didn't have to compromise. Now, I was helped with other people, but I didn't have to compromise on any of the procedures. And so, under the lawmaking, and of course it's a constitutional requirement that you cannot use money for or against an initiative that does not come from a natural person. What does that mean? That means that only human beings can vote, so therefore only human beings can contribute. So the corporations are left out in the cold. You know who's going to oppose what I'm talking about? The corporations. And when you oppose this, you are the tool of the corporations because you're afraid, and I don't say this disrespectfully, I say it respectfully, that you're afraid of something that's not there. And you have no experience in majority rule. You have no experience. None of us have. I don't have. But I do know, as a student of governance all my life, and having been to the second highest office in the United States, I do claim some knowledge of how it works internally and how it ties into human nature. And I've come to the conclusion that don't trust the government. Just trust yourselves and be not fearful. Because it can't get any worse than what it is. And it's going to get worse. If you followed anything what's going on in the United States, if the Congress continues, and whether it's Mitt Romney or Obama, that we are on a trajectory to take the world down with us when we go into self-destruct. And it will be economically. And what we had to melt down just recently, you know, it was just the beginning of the end.
Já bych si dovolil přispět česky, protože já bych to neuměl sformulovat, tak jestli můžu, a omlouvám se teda panu Gravelovi a ostatním. A taky nevím, jestli přesně...
Do mikrofonu, prosím.
Ne, že jsem ne všecko rozuměl, jak panu Gravelovi, tak pánům, tak dalece má angličtina bez speciálních situacích nefunguje, ale myslím, že to, že řeknu, co máme na srdci, nebo proč jsme se tu sešli a trochu reagovat na to, co se stalo. Já jsem sice mladší než páni profesoři, když ne o moc, ale musím říct, že celý život jsem byl rebelantem, nespokojencem, nikdy jsem nesouhlasil s existujícím režimem, vždycky jsem viděl na něm chyby. A z žertu říkám vám, když o tom žertuju, že naposledy jsem souhlasil s režimem za Tomáše Garrigua Masaryka, ale bohužel umřel, když mi byly 3 roky, jo, tak to si říkám takovýhle vtípek. Ale přestože jsem takovýhle skeptik a chodím taky do klubu skeptiků, takže jsem institucionální skeptik, tak ale nemohu souhlasit s tím, že se vlastně nedá nic dělat. Vždycky se dá něco dělat. Jsem zase na druhé straně nesmrtelným optimistou a považuji za jaksi i výnos nějakého intelektuální úrovně, nebo já nevím, občanský uvědomělosti, nebo jak to nazvat to, když někdo upadne do takové skepse, ale tak je, že se nedá nic dělat. Vždycky se dá dělat. Vždycky se dá dělat. A co se týká postupnosti změn, ano, samozřejmě to je, ale ty vládnoucí síly kdekoliv na světě a kdykoliv v historii se nikdy nevzdávají si moci dobrovolně. Buď se jejich moc si úplně rozpadnou, možná podle nějakých barbarů, což to nám taky může stát, a nebo jejich potíže, zejména ekonomicky, ale i prostě celkový společenský, jak si vyvolají takový odpor lidu, že potom stačí nějaký zážeh, aby došlo k zvratu, ale bohužel násilným a revolučním, a to je vždycky tak. Nechoďme daleko. 17. listopad. Doba byla zralá, jaksi těhotná revoluci, bych tak řekl, že? Ale musela být jiskra. Museli namátit studentům na národní třídě. Nebo...
Berlínská
ano, nebo musí vypuknout světová válka. Nebo nějaká katastrofa, což je zážeh, a potom ta institucionální moc se zhroutí. A teď jde o to, a to je jaksi náš úkol, nebo to my si dáváme za cíl, možná, že jsme idealisti nebo fantastici, ale musí tady být intelektuální skupina, vrstva, která by měla vědět, co dělat. To už říkali Rusáci, říkali, co dělat. To je důležité, vědět, co dělat. Jak vypadá naše vládnutí, ale to se netýká jenom dnešní vlády, to se týká všech sociálních a všechny, co jsme tady měli. Co pak ty vlády měly nějakou vizi, nějakou koncepci, kam chtějí tento stát dovést? Ani jeden z nich neměl. Když nemají vizi a koncepci, tak taky nemůžou vymýšlet nástroje, jak k tomu dospět. Ne urvat výnosná místa a setrvat na těchto místech do nekonečna. Samozřejmě to je většina sil všech profesionálních politiků našich, ale takových politiků, kterým o něco jde, aby tento stát někam spěl. Mluvilo se tady o Jeffersonovi a o zakladatelích Spojených států. Já se teďka čtu Reicha, to jistě znáte. Ten tam o tom velice občinně říká, jak to začínalo ve Spojených státech, s jakými ideály a nakonec v ústavě a vyhlášení práv, tam to všecko je a ta Amerika na tom stojí, i když to taky nedodržuje úplně, ale ten základ, ten princip zůstává. Je otázka ho prosadit a realizovat. Takže, jak si my bychom, je to já to bych považoval naši povinnost a za svůj jaksi předmět úsilí, a nejenom já, doktor Polák, a samozřejmě celé světové hnutí za přímou demokracii, když je všechno zlehčováno, já jsem tady o tom mluvil v tom, že to zlehčují, protože se jim to nehodí, protože by to rozvrátilo jejich moc, tak to je podle našeho názoru cesta, ať už revoluční nebo vývojová, k lepší demokracii. A vývojová, i když to bude vývoj, když to nebude revoluční, tak ty vládnoucí síly to nedají nikdy zadarmo. Musí být pod tlakem, pod trvalým tlakem, promyšleným, záměrným, cílevědomým. A to je náš úkol, proto si myslím, že jsme se tu, nebo my jsme si dopadli, kvůli tomu se shromaždili, my jsme se poradili, jak ten tlak vyvinout, nejen u nás, ale celosvětově. Protože malá Česká republička nebude dělat zázraky, i když, musím poukázat, na malé Švýcarsko, které je do značné míry naším vzorem, co se týká přímé demokracie. Víte, jak dopadají třeba ta referenda, překvapivě u nás to všelijací mudrlanti prostě nepřipustí, ale oni nedovolili stavět mešity a tak dále. Tam je vůli lidu, tam se na lid dbá, to znamená, nemusí být žádná revoluce, jdeme aspoň cestou švýcarskou pro začátek, nebo nějakou podobnou. Tak nevím, jestli jsem jaksi uspokojil ty dotazy, nebo jsem to dočerného, ale to je naše stanovisko.
Dobře, děkuji. Já bych požádal doktora Poláka, jestli by mohl říct hlavní myšlenky, které Zdeněk Trinkevič vyjádřil. So I would like to ask Jiří Polák for translation of the main ideas, which Zdeněk Trinkevič expressed, and maybe you can say also your opinion.
Yes, Jiří Trinkevič said that he's also a skeptic. He's even member of a club of skeptics, which exists here in Prague. But at the same time, he's also an optimist, and he believes that changes in society are possible, that there must be an intellectual avant-garde, so to say, which shows the way towards a better system of government. I want to comment on the idea that ordinary people are too stupid or something, so that they can't decide themselves. I have a concrete example to refer to. For some months ago, we put on a website 8 principles of citizens' democracy. Because we believe, or at least I believe, and I hope others do, that this system, which is based on a constitution, is illegitimate because the constitution has not been approved by referendum. So we have put forward a constitution written by our group, which represents ordinary citizens, and we put on the web 8 chief principles of this constitution. It is separation of legislative and executive power, direct election of the president, possibility of referendum, initiative and referendum, and all those elements which all supporters of direct democracy know. We put that on the web and let people vote on it. The participation was about 1,300 and more people who participated in this voting procedure. And the participants were ordinary people, not intellectuals, they were even workers, senior citizens, employees, policemen, all imaginable categories were represented. And more than 98% of those who responded declared that they are in favor of a citizens' constitution which would create a totally different political system. So I believe that this is a very encouraging finding, and that a skepticism of the type which was expressed here is not correct.
Okay, there were, you wanted to talk, and then you, okay, so please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Federico Tonini. I am from Italy, and with some friends I have grounded a movement which we call Democrazia Federale, which in English would translate in federal democracy. We have done quite a lot of work in the last years, and we have wasted an immense quantity of time discussing the opinions of several people about how the legislation should be changed. Finally, we have decided that we will have no legislation, we will abolish the parliament, and we will have direct democracy on the go every day because the technology allows for it. So our concept now is all the power to the people. We're working on a project which says a referendum every 3 months, which needs not to be a referendum like it is now, where the government sends you a piece of paper. You just go to your town hall and you, with your ID paper, you say yes or no on every kind of proposal which is put forward by anybody. And this is the maximum of democracy. I think it is a useless waste of time deciding how to change the representative democracy system, which must be abolished. It has to terminate, because with the representative democracy you just give away your power of citizen. Direct democracy is the answer. With the internet, with the website, with TV, you can just control in real time what is happening. And in our project, any citizen can go to his town hall and put forward a proposal. You can even propose that all the cats in town will be painted pink. And you can propose anything. And if the people accept it, this will be done. Because we believe the people in the majority is much more intelligent and honest than any kind of politician you can elect. Thank you.
If I'm right, the woman who wanted to talk,
Make a response to that.
later we can pick up the questions.
I would like to try to maybe de-radicalize what Mr. Gravel said without even taking anything away from what he said. I don't know if it will make sense for Mr. Musa. I believe that the core message from Mr. Gravel was more responsibility to the people, to us. And more responsibility I see as an ideal in the unknown future. At the moment, we don't know what the tools, what the systems, technology will be used to achieve more responsibility for people. So I think that the idea is radical, but it's in the distant future. And I don't see it as two venues. That's maybe one where I slightly disagree, but not really. Is either the government or the people. I think from any point, from any little center, from any little community, even if the community has nothing to do with politics, but it's a community or an NGO dealing with educational reforms, just partially related to politics, broader politics. People who will see this goal, this ideal, more responsibility to people, can start working towards that goal from many different standpoints. So I don't know if that makes it bearable, the idea of more responsibility, because you said in the heart you agree. In your mind you have problems with the radicality. But the radicality is at this point so distant. I don't think we have to deal with how distant it is. We don't have to measure how distant the radicality is, because we will find out once we take the first step, as you said, piecemeal solutions. We just take the first step from our standpoint to more responsibility for us.
Okay, thank you. So, there is one more question, or commentary.
name is Duchess, and I have been for 20 years a member of the Czech Social Democratic Party. But I have to apologize, I would like to opt the Czech language and translation markings. Americké banky jsou nazývány komorou Spojených států a vlastní obrovskou moc i majetek a ukazuje se tedy potřeba nějak tento majetek i moc diverzifikovat. V Česku krachovaly také banky a český ministr financí řekl, že Češi neumějí s bankami zacházet a proto prodal IPB banku v ceně 30 miliard korun japonské nomuře za symbolickou 1 korunu. V té době uveřejnil interview, ve kterém prohlásil, já bych to neměl říkat, ale tuším ve Švédsku hrozila krachem největší soukromá banka. V neděli se sešel švédský parlament a v pondělí ta banka byla zestátněna. Já tady nejsem přítel zestátňování, ale myslím si, že by existovala možnost, jak diversifikovat bankovnictví v Americe tak, že by byla vytvořena americká národní družstevní banka, kde by každým družstevníkem byl stát Americké unie, každý guvernér by tam měl jeden hlas a každý stát by měl právo na jednu dividendu, na stejnou dividendu. Takže by bohatství té banky šlo do každého státu unie a tím by ty finance byly diversifikovány. To je vše.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Dr. Paul, would you translate it or do you want me to translate it?
I have spoken with Mrs. Miluška Tišová before this conference, and she promised that she would translate such Czech contributions, so I would like
to translate. If you'll be so nice and say great ideas.
So the guys started about speaking about American banks and a way to maybe distribute the power or the finances of the banks. He then mentioned the situation of Czech banks facing some bankruptcies or difficult times. There was a case of RTB Bank that was of 30 billion crowns value, but was sold for 1 crown to a Japanese company. And he returned back to the subject of the American banks, and maybe the solution for the American financial sector would be to institute an American national cooperative bank where each state would own a share, and so that the wealth would be shared in this way. It's very brief.
Each senator would have 1 vote, so each state would have a power. Okay, so there were 3 commentaries, 3 questions, so if you want to reply, and then Professor Musil said he would like to add 1 more commentary.
First off, my friend from Italy, I recognized you when you came in. I was trying to place it, but we met with George Kokas. And I understand your frustration. I've had the same problem in other areas, and that is the frustration and anger over the injustice leads you to the position, throw them out, get them the hell out of the way. They're fighting us. And that sort of ties in with your comment, that we need to take partial responsibility. Well, the same thing. When you do something partially, here, we've had 24 states that have initiative lawmaking in the United States, and it's horrible. It's horrible because it's all controlled by representative government. So the minute you start piecemeal, you find yourself, the elites, the corporations, wake up. They crush it. They crush it here, they crush it there. So you never get a chance to get off the ground. And so these 2 gentlemen were critical of me being radical. Well, hell, you're 1,000 times more radical than I am. Because what I feel is that we do have over 230 years experience of representative government. And it has been not great, but it has not been bad. It's been slowly improving. And today, when you look around the world, and I painted such a gloomy picture, it was worse. It was worse 50 years ago. It was worse when you had the Second World War. It was worse when you had the First World War. I can go back in history and show you that right now, we're better off than we've ever been. And so, what you do is you build on that. And so you take representative government, leave it alone. My legislation does not touch representative government at all. What it does, it brings the people in independent of representative government. And it does it all at once. Because if you do it piecemeal, you'll never get it enacted into law. The gentleman who spoke about banking, you see, this is what generally happens to us. I have issues, war, peace, drug, you name it. I've got issues as much as you have. I don't want to address my issues because I know I can't address them. I've been a legislator. I've tried. And I know that you can't really address the public interest. So all I'm talking about is meta legislation. That is fundamental legislation. It only does one thing. Empowers you as an individual to be able to make laws. That's all I'm talking about. I don't want to talk about the World Bank. I don't want to talk about the excesses of it. But I have enough faith in the people that if you give them the basic tool to make laws, that they will do a better job than our existing leadership. A better job. And this is scientifically proven. What Dr. Pollack was saying is scientifically proven. It's called the wisdom of crowds. And it's just that simple. When you involve 100 million people making a majoritarian decision, it is going to be a lot better than 1 million people. And so that's where the faith comes in that I have. Because I've seen too many studies, I've seen too many results in this regard. And so in addressing my Italian friend, I'm going to Rome, and one of the things I'm going to say is that I can design, and you can, these professors of political science can design, they could take this law that I've written in English. I've done it in Korea, South Korea, and it's better than America. And so you can take this document, translate it, tweak it, and simple. Let me go back to the simplicity of it. And the technology permits, you can form an organization, a non-profit organization, which has total transparency. And you ask people, do you want to be empowered? You raise money to conduct the election. You don't let the government conduct the election. The minute the government conducts the election, you're done. They'll sabotage it. So you raise the money, which is what we're doing in the United States, raising the money to conduct the election, totally transparent, nobody's ripping it off, and then you have a criteria for decision making. In the United States, the criteria for us is the majority of the people who voted in the last presidential election. So for you, I would presume it would be the majority of the people who voted in your presidential election or parliamentary election. So when that majority votes in the affirmative, it is the law of the land automatically. Now the government may dispute that. You go to court and you can fight it. But here's the dynamic of what happens politically. Is that when you begin to communicate this idea to people and all of a sudden people buy into it and vote for it, they own the idea individually. And I'll tell you, one thing that I know about politicians and judges, they're basically cowards. And so what will happen is that the people will assert, that they will believe that yes, I have a right to be a legislator. And I'll tell you, when representative government tries to sabotage that, at their peril. Because now you have cause to take to the streets. You see, what happened historically in the United States with this first written constitution is we had a revolution. After the revolution, which was violent, after the revolution, we formed the government. Well, we formed the government that included slavery. And all the Americans say, oh, our Constitution is the best in the world. It's not. It's a very undemocratic document, and I can show you a chapter and verse on that. But But what we do have is that the people have taken ownership of the fact that they are the sovereigns. And everybody represents that. Politicians run for office and say, I want to represent you, the people. Well, you hold them to that, and you say, well, fine. We want to represent ourselves too. And that, I think, is the direction that I would go in. But I would just caution you. I have an article of faith. At some point, we will have what we call critical mass of support. We're not even close to that right now. Critical mass means all of a sudden you hit the tipping point. You've heard that theory, the tipping point. All of a sudden what happens, critical mass, you won't have to explain to people, they'll be for it. What will happen is that when the people hit critical mass in wanting to become lawmakers, sovereigns, corporations will wake up to what we're doing. If the corporations who ruled the world, de facto, were aware of what I'm advocating, I would have been killed a long time ago. Because this is, what we're talking about is changing the paradigm of human governance. And if human beings can't govern themselves on a majoritarian basis, then there is no hope.
Okay, thank you.
I'm again sorry to continue the discussion, but it's serious. You know, we are talking about more serious things. And let me say one sentence about my position. I am a left-winger. I am always rebelling against the contemporary power situation in this country. This is known, but at the same time, let me again express some of my views. In Europe, we do distinguish between ethics of intentions and ethics of responsibility. I'm using this Weberian term quite intentionally now. I think that this idea of direct democracy, which is near to my, first, if I may express my personal views, and I must excuse myself for doing it, we have to discuss the issue in a deeper way, excuse me, sir. I would agree that there are some realms in modern societies where ordinary people, as you call them, I think, are able to participate in, not only because of good intentions, but because of understanding the effects of certain decisions. Responsibility, I think you mentioned responsibility as well. And this has something to do with your remarks, our Italian colleague. Technologically, most probably, we are ready. Yes, but the barrier or the trouble is not in technology. It is not even in the quality of human minds. I agree to some extent with your views that people are able to understand and to do decisions. But the difficulties and the troubles are in the complexity of the issues, in the matter, in the object of our...
That is right.
Pardon?
That is right, because
in the
system today, the people,
Okay,
there's
if you
no chance.
If you decided to talk, you have to use a microphone. So.
Okay.
So I would again leave me
Yes.
one
But he will just
one
finish.
sentence.
So,
Yes.
and then you will.
I'm asking you for more responsibility on the second steps. You have excellent intentions, and with heart, and I'm sure there are many people in the audience here who would agree, but we ask for thoughts on second steps, on the effects, and in this moment you have troubles. This civilization, these societies are so complex. I don't think that all the members of the parliament, one of them sitting here, are crooks, you know, or that they, all the ministers are criminals. Some are, you know, but we have to understand where is it feasible. I think town planning, for example, community, small, and again I repeat, small is beautiful. In small, transparent situations, people who have no time to think about it. They work, they are employed. And the good intentions you mentioned, you said, sir, that the people know what is good. Yes, but the step from what is good as intention to instruments, to changes, laws which would work, this step is enormously difficult. You know better.
No commentary by Federico.
One point I would only say. The real problem in modern society is that the people is left without any chance to understand what the hell is happening. Because I don't know about your country, but when I read every day 2 or 3 newspapers in Italy, on any issue, on any matter, they don't tell you what is happening. They only tell you the Communist Party says this and the Liberal Party says that, but they never tell you what is to be decided. And at the end, the laws are approved and the people does not even know what the hell they say. In addition, there is many examples of laws who are approved from the parliament and are not described by the media. The people doesn't know that this law is in effect. And we have thieves and crooks in our government. I have written, luckily this is in Italian, I have dozens of examples of public money in billions of euros stolen from the people with laws that the people doesn't know exist. And the parliament, and this is not on the media. The problem is, if you make a referendum and say to people, this is the proposal, you have to vote on it in 2 months. Everybody can say his own opinion and the people has a way to make up a decision. If you don't do this, the representative democracy is a regime of thieves.
Okay, thank you. There are 2 more questions or commentaries. Please go ahead. Then you. Okay.
I would like to bring it back to Mr. Grebel and the question how to make the direct democracy possible. And it's getting clear slowly, but still there are some empty spaces. You said that you would keep the representative government and at the same time to create kind of independent body created from the people. Now, there's a question like, where is the border between competencies, between like representative government on one side and the people's body? That's one question. And the second point would be, it seems that we are much more skeptical here in the post-communist country about the will of people and the possibility of manipulation, let's say. You say that the solution is technology, but on the other side you can easily, if you will decide about some issue via internet, you can easily manipulate the opinions of the people huge and massive campaign. Thank you.
Okay, and there was one more question and commentary. The last one, because the time's up.
So I speak very shortly. Yes, I think that the problem partly in this discussion is that one, that the people in the United States are a bit different compared with the people in Czech Republic. And that's the difference also in the discussions, yes. And I hope that the decision for the future will be made or must be made with the people in the biggest countries, which in the economic power is concentrated, particularly the financial power is concentrated. That's, for example, United States, the group of BRICS, that's Brazil, China, Russia, South Africa, and Brazil, yes. And I think that it will be much better. And the people in that country, I think it's deciding about the future much more quickly than the people in Czech Republic. Yes. In our country, we are accustomed, or we are, the majority is accustomed, that we can elect somebody else who will change the thing instead of us, instead of the people. And I think that in these countries, which I mentioned yet, it's much better. And the people are, for example, United States, yes, that people are much more accustomed to them, that they are changing with the things, yes. That it's not necessary to wait for somebody from the political ends, and they will do it instead of us.
Just
sorry. I just one proposal. Look, it's great opportunity to have here Senator Mike Grayle. I have in front of me his paper. I think the key moment today, the key spot in the world is really in the United States. The movement Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street movement. Therefore, why not in the afternoon, tomorrow, to spend more time about this? Maybe I'm wrong, but I have a deep feeling that Obama, if he wishes, he must join more or less this movement, or not to be president. Therefore, it's quite possible. If I read Paul Krugman, the top commentator in New York Times, etc., how many actors from Hollywood are traveling to New York to support, etc., etc. I think America, the revolution, not socially revolution yet, but the revolution, the center of revolution is now in United States and mainly in New York. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you would
just briefly, let me just tell you, I'm happy to hear the comment that you think Americans are so superior. That's the problem. They think that they're smarter than everybody else in the world, and they're not. They're not. We're no different than anybody else. We got Czechs in the United States. We've got Poles in the United States. The advantage of the United States is that it was the amalgam of all the peoples of the world. And we were blessed with 2 oceans to defend ourselves with, and that way, and with untold resources that we could use. But no, as human beings, you are just as good as we are. And when you tell me that life is complex, I'll tell you something. One example. Edward Teller, the scientist that developed the hydrogen bomb. When I was a senator, I just come from Alaska. I've been in real estate in Alaska. I'm sitting on my sofa, and Edward Teller is lobbying me on the ABM treaty. Okay? I'm building the ABM. And so I'm listening to Edward Teller. I barely passed physics in college. And I'm listening to Teller, and I refer to him as a scientific genius. Okay? But when it came to policy matters, I was equal to him. Because his bomb could kill me, and I should have a vote on whether or not we want to use that bomb. And so one of the things you have to understand, that there is a legislator, I'd like to meet him before I leave, but I'll point out to you that when somebody tells you the law is too complex for you to understand, wake up and realize he's screwing you. That's what's happening. If a law is not understandable by the people, it shouldn't be a law. Just that simple. Now, you wonder about the wisdom of the people? Do you know how we legislate? Do you know how you very live? I've been drinking this water. Okay. What the hell do I know about this corporation? Is this water safe? I don't know. I didn't call the government before I took a sip of water and say, have you examined this factory that's putting this water in the bottle? I didn't do that. I voted and I made a decision to take the water on the basis of Q. In English, I don't know the word in Czech. It's C-U-E. We live our lives on Qs. And in the legislature, we vote on Qs. I come from a state, Alaska, where agriculture was insignificant. So in the 12 years I was a senator, I never read a piece of legislation about agriculture. And yet I voted every time on it. How did I vote on it? I either trust him, I respect his views, or I traded my vote for something I wanted him to vote on that I was interested in. And so it's a long rolling process, and we live our lives on cues, and we then vote on cues. So the public, when they come into the operation, it won't be anarchy. They're not going to turn around, and the public has insisted every company have to give everybody information about the product they're putting out. Now that will create anarchy in the world and bring the whole world to a standstill. No, all you're going to do is you vote on cues and you rely on other people. And that won't change. But what will change is that when the majority of the people set policy, they will be the primary beneficiaries of that, not the small special interests that control our society. And I thank you very much for inviting me here. If I sound aggressive to you, I am aggressive, and that's the reason why I was such a maverick as a senator. And I don't consider myself liberal, don't consider myself conservative. I try to make up my mind on what I see. And if it causes me to do 180 degrees, I will do it. I will change. And so with all these years of experience, I've come to the conclusion that, and let me repeat, you want to solve a problem, there's only two venues to do it. The government, where the problem exists, or the people. And if the people had the tool, the meta tool, to do the job, you will see an unbelievable improvement in human governance. And I thank you very, very much. And I would commend those who want to, can go to the website, you can read the text of the law, the details, how the process goes, because lawmaking is not off the spur of the moment. Lawmaking must be deliberative. And when the people are then processed into a deliberative process, you cannot believe how great our society, not just Americans, but Czechs, all human beings, how society will be able to improve structurally. Thank you very much.